Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. My name's Brian Sauer. We talk about Blu-rays and 4Ks and all things physical media here, and this seemed like a very appropriate thing to do. I've got a longtime online friend of mine, Dave Wain, on the other end here, and he has a really remarkable video store in the UK. And Dave, am I right in it's one of the remaining, like there aren't too many left in the UK? Is that correct?
Well, last count, Brian. I think the remaining count is about two.
Two.
So yeah,
Wow.
we're one of two. Yeah, it's a bit crazy, really. Because like when I came here, it was originally my dad's store. He started out in this place 48 years ago, 1976.
Oh my gosh.
And when I came here, I went to university and had a really good idea of becoming getting a real job, for example. But that just didn't pan out. So I had to get a pretend job by working here. And what I did 20 years ago, there was video stores everywhere. I mean, you and I know. I mean, we're roughly the same age. You know, you go back 25 years, and you can imagine the number of video stores you had to choose from. It was just an absolute bounty. It was a feast.
Yeah. No, so wait, sorry, I should not bury the lead. What's the name of your store and whereabouts are you guys located?
Yeah, it's the name of the store is Snips Movies. Snips Movies, SNIPS, and it's located on a weird patch of land called a peninsula, Wirral Peninsula, which is sandwiched about 3 miles from Liverpool and a few miles from North Wales, the Wales border. So, you know, from the third floor of this building, I can see right over to Liverpool, and it's a wonderful view. So yeah, it's kind of in the northwest of England.
Very nice. And you've been around for did you say 48 years?
Well, the
Or,
store has been here for 48 years,
oh,
but
okay.
we've done uh, movie rental since 1995. We did something else prior to that, the family business. And then in 1995, the shop next door, the shop adjacent to me here, was a video store that was run by a butcher. So he had butchery on one side, cuts of raw meat, and then on the other side he had VHS, about 300 VHS,
Nice.
which was a strange scenario because I because there's a big gap between me and my brothers. My dad used to babysit me during the day with an endless supply of videos. And when you would open the VHS cassette, there would just be a really pungent smell of like raw sausage or something. It was quite abysmal. But yeah, in 1995, the guy next door retired. And my dad fancied a change in scenery. So he said, well, let me buy all your stock, let me carry it to the shop next door, and let's have a go at videos. Because in 1995, it was boom time and there was very little to lose. So that is that. And then,
How
yeah,
did
I went to university. I went to university, and then, like I say, instead of embarking on a regular career, I decided to become a slacker for the rest of my life.
I wish I could join you, man. I some of my favorite memories are of my video store employee
Oh yeah.
years. And I'm saddened because my kids can't have that job anymore, really. It's just not really out there. But how have you been able to maintain all this time? I'm so impressed.
Just dogged determination, really. I mean, it is. I've got a few other fingers and a few other pies. So there's not as much pressure on the store as there might be for a store that just did movie rentals. So there's a few other fingers and a few other pies. But just dogged determination. It's a very um, fortunate situation, very fortuitous situation regarding ownership of the building and stuff like that. That gives me a very intense degree of freedom, which I'm very privileged. And you know, I just wish other people had that freedom as well to stay in the same line of work because it is an absolute privilege. I love it to bits. And like I say to people, I still jump up out of bed every morning and race into work, which is one thing that not many people have the fortune of doing, which is a ridiculous position to be in.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can't say that's my position at this time, so I totally get it. But no, I love what you're doing there, and I'm just curious. Like, I can see some of the store behind you, obviously, but how do you generally? I mean, you've got movies to the rafters, it looks like. So, how do you generally organize the place?
Well, it's a really small store, to be honest, Brian. And we always built our own fixtures. That's always been in the rule book, and we've
Nice.
always go high. I mean, this shelf over here. This is World Cinema here, organized in country order. So if you look at the very top, we've got Argentina, Austria, Belgium, France, and then right down to the bottom shelf, we have Spain, Thailand, Vietnam, etc., etc. About a
Wow.
thousand films here. So I mean, if you opened a video store tomorrow, Brian, I guarantee that it would be pretty much the same layout that it is here because we just have that you know innate desire to do it things a certain way, organized in a certain way. But yeah, the way it has evolved, I guess, over time is with labels because labels, certainly in the last 10 years or so, they've really risen to the forefront of the collector's mentality and the renter's mentality as well. You go back 10, 15 years, and 95% of my revenue was from new releases, brand new movies. Your comic book movies, your Marvel movies, your action movies, your Denzel Washington, Liam Neeson, etc., etc. But that's dwindled now right down to about 55, 60%. And much of the traffic these days is through boutique labels and older films that perhaps are more difficult to get in a world of streaming. So yeah, I have special sections devoted to Indicator, Eureka, most of the British labels, Indicator, Eureka, 88, Arrow, and I do have a lot of imports in. So we have special sections devoted to people like Visual Vengeance, Severin, Tempe, and things like that, Vinegar Syndrome over there. So yeah, it varies. It varies, but
Did I see
it's
you
it's
had,
always evolving.
sorry, did I see you had something like 16,000 titles in shop?
39 short of 17,000. So yeah,
Wow.
it's doing all right,
That's
There's more
amazing.
coming in every week, which is really cool.
Well,
So every week there's something to look forward to.
well, one of the reasons I want to have you on is because I have been enjoying your show inside the video store, which I'm sure people that watch my channel probably are already aware of it, but just in case they weren't, maybe run down what that's all about and how that started.
Um, I just felt as though there's a lot of people. I do all right on Twitter. I do all right on Twitter. There's a few people follow me. A few people shared the point of view that it's interesting to know someone with a video store. It's interesting to know the mechanics of it. And that just seemed to gather momentum as the years have gone by. People seem to really want to know more about the day-to-day running and how it exists and the various things that happen and stuff that comes in, stuff that goes out, what people are renting, the new films that get released, which films I buy, which films I don't buy. And I thought, well, it's a bit boring to do that on Twitter and sort of put upon everybody that this minutia of information every single day. And you don't have a choice on Twitter, do you? You either read it or you don't. Whereas on YouTube, you can decide whether to click on it or not. So I thought, well, give it an hour a week. Give it an hour a week, sit in front of this goddamn phone and tell people about my week. And it seems to be doing all right. I've got a really sort of loyal following of people, and it's good fun. So we go through what's been renting out, what's been kind of trending, what's popular. It's like the past few weeks report to the commissioner. It's been out relentlessly. It's been out,
Really?
maybe well, yeah, weird things like that happen. So
That's
whether
so
they listen to
cool.
maybe they might listen to Pure Cinema podcast, I don't know. They might listen to something else because a lot of people do come in with lists, either from Pure Cinema, from Just the Discs, from other
Oh
podcasts
my.
elsewhere, and they come in and they work their way through that list.
I'm so
I forgot
I'm
what you
so
recommend. Go
I
on,
just
Brian.
gotta say
Sorry.
I'm so honored that that any of the shows could have that reach that they could be affecting your client base in any way. That's remarkable.
You would be very, very surprised. You'd be very, very surprised. Because I have probably 7 or 8 customers that come in and they'll say, Dave, have you got XYZ? Where's that one come from? And they will say, oh, Brian mentioned it. And that's it. That's all we need to know. We don't need to know
Wow.
which podcast, where, or what date. We just say, Brian mentioned it. And that's it.
Oh, I'm so honored. That's so touching. Well, that's great. I mean, you clearly, I know you have very eclectic and expansive tastes along the lines of myself. What are like some of
Mm.
your favorite labels, your favorite kinds of movies? I mean, like I said, you have, it seems like far reaching, like beyond just whatever you like, but you have all kinds of things. But I'm just curious what you prefer of yourself.
Um, in terms of labels, you know, you like the big ones, you like the big guns, the guys who are repeatedly giving us absolute ridiculously good quality home media. So, Vinegar Syndrome, obviously, month in, month out, Arrow Video, month in, month out. Some of the smaller labels, though, really do need our attention, and it's nice to give them our attention. Someone like Film Masters, for example.
Oh
The
yes,
way the thing I love about Film Masters is they don't care. I mean, I like a curated release list. I like it when a film label like 88, they have their Italian collection, they have their Shaw Brothers collection, and they deviate every now and then, which is fine, but they like to keep to their very strict way of doing that. That's cool because you kind of know what's coming. So every month of announcements, there'll be an Italian film, there'll be a slasher movie, and there'll be, a couple of Shaw Brothers films, which is cool. I like that. However, Film Masters kind of tweak that whole system. And then one month you'll get, you know, the Scarlet Letter, which is great. And then the next month you'll get the Crippled Masters, which is just insane. I went on loan yesterday, which
I
is
was gonna
really
say, oh,
cool.
it's checked out. Nice.
Just wonderful to have that kind of diversity where you don't know what's coming next. So Film Masters, I really, really do like. I think the way they're restoring films. I mean, I think maybe because some of them are in the public domain, people might think, oh well, do we really need to, pay whatever $20 for a Film Masters Blu-ray? But it's so lavishly curated with a commentary, with normally a documentary on there from our old friend Daniel. Um, they're really well done. So I think Film Masters, because
Oh,
they're
that's
maybe one of the little
that's a really great
deserve.
spotlight because they're actually a label I haven't been able to delve into as much as I'd like. I just saw that they announced
Mm,
and maybe have coming Creature with the Blue Hand with Klaus Kinski,
wow,
which I remember
yeah.
Tarantino programmed that on Trio. If there's a very short-lived cable network in the US called Trio. I think they were US based, maybe they're even UK based. I don't know.
No, no,
Um,
no.
where they let him program a bunch of movies. I remember um Bus Riley's Back in Town was one that got a Blu-ray from Imprint recently. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Crazy House, the sequel to Hell's a Poppin', was one he did.
All
That
right.
still doesn't
Yeah.
have a good release, but I remember Creature with the Blue Hand was one of the ones he programmed, and so I watched it on DVD like 10 years ago, and I remember digging it, but I sort of forgotten about it. So that may be
Yeah.
one of my
Yeah.
first pickups from them, although it seems like everything they're putting out looks like a winner, so I got to kind of dig deep on them.
I think so. I think so. Like I say, there's other stuff like Common Law Wife they put out because they've got access to something weird now. I think Beast from Haunted Caves. There's a few Cormans there. Giant Gila Monster as well, which I think is Bertai Gordon, isn't it? So yeah, it's a real eclectic mix. And they're cool films. They're kind of cold, low budget, cool movies that you can really, and they're really competitively priced as well. Normally they don't exceed $20, which for a boutique release packed with special features, and they're normally on a double bill. They try and stick in a second feature on every disc, which is just added value, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's been becoming one of my favorite bonus features. As much as I love
Mm.
everything that can be done in terms of commentaries, visual essays, I love all that. But, that guy Dick Miller comes out from Decanalog and they include Star Hops as a bonus feature. I'm
Yeah,
like, that's great. That movie's never been on Blu-ray. That's wonderful. Oh, very
yeah.
nice. Very nice.
Second Rebellion. I haven't seen it yet, but I saw your chat with
With a,
Elijah last week or the
oh,
week
very
before.
nice. Yeah, he's
That was
great.
great.
The doc is a lot of fun, but Star Hops is just a nice little addition. And so it's super
Is it?
cool that
Have you seen it? Yeah.
Film Masters is doing that. That's great. Um, in terms of movies though, what are some of your all-timers? Like you lean genre. I know that you've written for Schlock. Do you want to talk about Schlock Pit at all?
Well, the Schlock Pit we've been doing for 10 years now. We've got 1,000 articles up there,
Wow.
and we're just really, really, really passionate. We've got a book coming out next year, which is called
Fantastic.
Schlock and Awe, The Forgotten Films of the 90s Rental Realm, and kind of looks at forgotten films. I mean, it's something you and I sing from the same hymn sheet on, really. We love forgotten films, the films that have been neglected. And that's what happened in the 90s. You know this all too well, but in terms of your viewers, they might not know that back in the 90s when we were We were mere youngsters. Um, there were movies were made for video stores. It was a whole cottage industry. Granted, we all know the theatrical aspect, but to have movies made specifically to go into video stores was quite something. And I think we all got a little bit arrogant, a little bit cocky when DVD came around. And around about 98, 99, the advent of a new format, we thought, it's okay. It's all right. All these films on video are all going to come out eventually on DVD. And we thought, well, let's get rid of them. We don't need them anymore. Look at this great shiny disc that's in our lives. Isn't that wonderful? Look at that horrible, clunky VHS that we used to do. And we were just too quick to change. And we kind of left behind a lot of films. And we've got a database of about 2,000 films just from that decade, just from the 90s that have been left behind to rot
Wow.
on a format that we've forgotten about. So the first volume is going to look at the 250, for example. I mean, I've got some here, Brian. I'm thinking, I mean, I know you've been going crazy on the VHS front
I have
recently as
been.
well.
This
And
is timely. Yes.
they're really exciting. Isn't it? When you put those posts up of your latest stack of VHS, I've got to admit, really, really exciting because you're seeing titles there that you haven't seen discussed on DVD, on TV, anywhere for probably the best part of 30 or 35 years. So it's so exciting when you see these films.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got a couple here that I plucked out of the back. Stuff like I wrote a piece for the Schlock a couple of weeks back on Larry Bishop. And you got to remember that back in the 90s, Larry Bishop came out of nowhere to make two films. He made Underworld, which he wrote, and he made Trigger Happy, which you guys got as Mad Dog Time.
Oh, there you go.
They were both done the same year. They were both made within 6 months of each other. They absolutely bombed. But 30 years on, I'm looking at them again. I mean, you can read my piece on the Schlock bit. I think they're absolutely fantastic. I mean, you look at the cast from Mad Dog Time. You got Kyle MacLachlan, Burt Reynolds, Ellen Barkin, um, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Dreyfuss, Gabriel Byrne. I mean, the list is endless. Richard Pryor's in it as well. Um, just cool films. I mean, Mad Dog Time did get a DVD release in the States, but it's since gone out of print. It costs a fortune to try and get it in. And Underworld has never had a DVD release anywhere in the world. I don't think. I'm sure someone will write to you and tell me otherwise. Things like this as well. I mean, you and I know we're really passionate about TV movies.
Yes.
Stuff like this. Crime of the Century with Stephen Ray, J.T. Walsh, Isabella Rossellini, and Michael Moriarty. I mean, a great classic HBO movie from 1998, I think it was, or 1996. Cool story, fascinating true story set in 1932 about the abduction of, forgot the guy's name. Um, doesn't matter. It'll come to me later. But brilliant, interesting film, and just disappeared. Not available outside of VHS in any
I
format.
I
Yeah,
love this stuff, Dave. Love this.
I won't keep it going. I'll just whip
No,
through
no,
two more.
you could go as far as you want. I love this.
No, something like Aberration, in my opinion, one of the greatest horror films of the 90s. Really creepy. The late,
What?
great, wonderful Pamela Gidley filmed this in New Zealand. A guy called Tim Boxell directed it. It's really, really good. It's a really creepy kind of creature feature. Pamela Gidley is just wonderful in it. And yeah, I think it had a Belgian DVD release. I did import a European DVD of this, but otherwise it just kind of disappeared with no English speaking um, release for DVD, which is frustrating. And finally, I know it's a subject that we can't really talk about because it's a little bit passé in the very PC world of 2024. But one of the things that I'm really, really, really passionate about is erotic thrillers, and especially the 90s wave of erotic thrillers. I mean, I'm sure all your customers will have seen that great documentary that came out through one of Vinegar Syndrome's partners.
We kill for love, I
Uh,
think it's called.
yeah, yeah, which did touch upon many. But some of these, there's two here from Gregory Dark. We have Carnal Crimes there, and also Secret Games. These will never grace any other format than VHS, which is kind of sad because it's iconic artwork, great performances, kind of modern day neo noirs. And they're really, really cool. Yes, they have a bit of nudity in it. It's nothing prolonged, it's nothing offensive, and they're just really, really well made. And I think we're overdue, long overdue, for a reappraisal of that genre because it's such a fascinating window of time that took place between 1990 and 1996 before the horrible old internet came into prominence.
No, I'm with you, and that documentary has definitely spurred my re-interest in that stuff, which was as a
Mm.
video store employee of the 1990s, you could not, even at Blockbuster, we couldn't get away. I feel like we even had, did we have an erotic thriller section? I feel like we may have
Oh,
had a specific section. I just watched, coincidentally, it's not 90s, it's 89, but I watched Bedroom Eyes 2 last night with Wings Hauser, which
Chuck
isn't.
Vincent was it?
What's that? Yeah, Chuck Vincent. Good catch. Yeah. Um, Not a great movie necessarily, but Wings is really doing his best and he carries as
Yeah.
much as he can. But nonetheless, VHS only title. It's not streaming anywhere. There's not even a YouTube rip, so I had to buy a copy on eBay. And like you say, Dave,
Mm.
I was certainly coming back to the VHS thing. I was certainly part of that the problem there because I collected VHS because I grew up on it and I worked in video stores and I collected for years and I let a lot of that stuff go when DVD came along because I was under that same assumption you were. And I think I got caught up in the idea of this is going to be the best visual presentation and VHS is garbage. And I got to be honest, like I had lived by that sort of idiom for a really long time until I stupidly stumbled across the fact that my I've got like a 60-inch TV in my bedroom, an older one 1080, not
Yeah.
4K, but it still has RCA inputs. So I
Ah,
hooked up
mm,
a VCR to it and I was like, well, I'll be damned, man. VHS does not look that much worse than just a straight DVD. It looks pretty
mhm,
solid. And suddenly I was like, what was I doing? And it really partially spurred on. And then, of course, the whole idea of you can dive into Letterboxd, and I'm sure you, like you said, you have a remarkable database, I'm sure, of films only available on VHS. And it's
mm.
crazy how many are and how many good ones that, are totally dropped out of the conversation. And so I've become obsessed. I'm constantly haunting eBay these days and all the video places around town that I can to try and pick up new and interesting. That's the other thing about doing the show for as many years. We're 7.5 years in. At a certain point, you're digging for undiscovered or less talked about gems. At a certain point, you got to kind of start to go off grid. You got to start to look into the places like VHS where, yes, it's a
Mm.
little less accessible to people, but there is some hope that they might seek them out some other way or that some label might get wind of it and be like, oh, what's that? And you never know. So, but I've been just loving, diving back into VHS has been rejuvenating for me this year for sure.
You're absolutely right, Brian. And unless, people like yourself start talking about it, other people won't sit up and take notice. Unless, everybody groups together and starts talking about VHS. I was very savage towards VHS up to quite recently, to be honest, in terms of its durability, its longevity. Because I got caught in a situation where so many of my old VHS that I stored at home just gradually began to form this horrible white mold that you can sometimes get. And it was so disappointing to see that. And it kind of made me hate the format for a brief period of time. But like you say, you stick a VHS into your machine and you have, 6 or 7 trailers beforehand. And that again spurs you off on 7 different directions, maybe films that just haven't even graced any format since VHS. But it's really interesting. I mean, this whole conversation falls back into the video store thing. And what I mean by that is, let's think of the next generation. We're in a situation where, I mean, your kids are very fortunate in that they can, come home and they have access to a wide variety of physical media, and they will have for many years to come. But if you're a kid, say 16, 17, and you're developing a real passion for films, what are your options? How can you see movies? You can't afford, if your parents aren't into films, you can't afford to subscribe to 7 or 8 different streaming services to get a taste of what's out there. I mean, I'll come back to what I said about 20 minutes ago. We were fortunate as kids and teenagers. We had access to many video stores, which, when you combine them, they all had a really good array of films. And we could kind of dip in and dip out and discover stuff from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, any era. But today, this kind of coming generation can't do that. And one of the great things about here is, certainly in the last 2 years, I've seen a real change in the shift in the demographic, whereby most of my new customers now are aged between 18 and 40.
Oh,
That the younger people who are really, really fed up with forking out fortunes every month to pay for films that they don't really want to watch. And instead, they want to come in with their lists, with their IMDb top 250s, with the stuff that they found from Letterboxd on various lists. And they want to discover stuff. It's like, one of the biggest examples of this is, you look at one of your favorite films of all time, W.C. Fields. It's a gift, right?
love it, love it, love it, love it.
Here it is. Here it is in the video store. You can come and rent that whenever you want. Can you stream it?
Cannot
Can't
stream it.
stream it in the UK,
That
stream
that
it in the
is
US.
that drives me crazy. And the fact that like, I mean, don't get me started, but like you could go down this avenue with a lot of things, but classic comedy, W.C.
Mm-hmm.
Fields has very little footprint in the streaming world.
Yeah.
Thankfully, he now has some space in the Blu-ray world thanks to Kino Lorber and some other labels, which has been a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of streaming, in terms of access for younger people, he's locked out. And a good portion of some of the Marx Brothers movies are locked out from streaming. I mean, thankfully, most of those are on Blu-ray now too. But that kills me. That stuff is you have to get lucky and have it programmed as part of like a Criterion Channel retrospective or something. Yeah, it kills me that W.C. Fields and some of these classic comedians are so hard to see. I mean, outside of physical.
What can I do? If you're a kid, if you're a cinephile who's, under 25, under 30, how are you meant to discover a film like that? How can you discover a film like that if it's not streaming?
Yeah.
It's so difficult. I mean, we were so not nostalgic in any regard. I always say to people who kind of come in and drop to their knees and say, "Oh my God, I'm in heaven." I kind of kick them in the nuts and I say, "Look, get up. This is about tomorrow. This is about tomorrow. It's not about looking back. It's not about trying to recreate something from the 80s and 90s. It's about recreating something for tomorrow because it's about the next generation. It's about providing films, giving people who are younger an opportunity to discover films without an algorithm getting in the way. We have to do that. I mean, film watching, it might not seem um, a very sort of trendy thing to say, but it's becoming an elitist pastime. It's an elitist pastime whereby you have to have money to have access to a wide variety of films. If you can't afford a multitude of streaming services, you can't have access to a wide variety of films, and that's wrong. 30 years ago, we all had access. We all had access. Doesn't matter how much money, doesn't matter if you're a bus driver, doesn't matter if you're a doctor. You had access to the same variety of films. But now we don't. Now it's the people who can afford it have access to films, and that shouldn't be the case. Everyone should have access to a wide variety of films, including the people who are minimum wage and are working class. It's so important. We've got to really keep art and culture available to every single human being. It's really important. It's something I'm really, really passionate about.
No, and wow, I love that. I absolutely love that sentiment. I agree 100%. And the idea that the even if you do have the money to access those streaming services, you're still being dictated. You're still being controlled
Mm-hmm.
by what is ultimately a lot of corporations and what they think is
Mm-hmm.
important. Granted, you have some niche things that happen inside that, and so you do get some access, but I just
Yeah.
am not down with the idea that I'm going to let corporations dictate what's available to me or to any budding film fans. And so people
Mm.
like yourselves, that running video stores and collectors in general, there's this great, I love the passion for physical media and, the whole physical media versus streaming. Whatever. I stream things. I certainly am not against it. Uh,
No,
but
no,
I,
no, no.
but I will say what's interesting about it is that we have all become, in a way, archivists because
Mm.
we're now
Yeah.
keeping this stuff alive, especially things that go out of print, and such. And, this stuff can be shared digitally. You can rip
Mm.
things and you can send things to people. Granted, that's a little frowned upon, but nonetheless, if somebody still has it, then it's still
Mm.
available in a way, and that's really crucial, I think. And I really love your idea of making as much film available to as many people as possible. Yeah, it's really important. Otherwise, our film culture dwindles down and sort of suffers on the vine, if you will, because we're just left with with again whatever these corporations decide is. And I'm doing this because
Mm.
I'm saying it's getting smaller and smaller in terms of what they think is important. Like I went on to Netflix is not a great example, and they never have been in terms of older films. But you can go on Just Watch, which is an app I use quite frequently, and you can reduce to 1900 to 2000. Just say, show me movies
Mm.
from 1900 to 2000. It's like a handful. It's like almost nothing. You know what I mean? In terms of what, I mean, granted, that's algorithms and that's kind of what people are watching, and that I'm sure influences some of that. But that said, I think that there could be more consideration given to older films. It just seems like people have decided that they're not important, and I couldn't disagree more. I just think there's so much great stuff in older cinema, and new cinema is great, but I feel like a lot of the best films were made in the past, and I don't know that we're going to top a lot of that stuff. So to lose access to it is really sad.
Whether they're the best films or not, the fact that they're culturally important, and the fact that so many directors who existed in the 40s and 50s had a direct influence on the directors from the 70s, had a direct influence on the directors from the 90s, and so on and so forth. And so it's a linear path, and it's important that if you have any regard for history or film history, anything like that, you want to know, if you're watching Reservoir Dogs, you want to know what influenced that film, and you want to trace that back to see what influenced Quentin, and then go back to maybe John Woo, then go back to maybe you know um, crime cinema from the 70s, and then go back a little bit further. And it's a wonderful little jigsaw puzzle that you can spend your whole life kind of piecing together, and it's fantastic. But it's just when you're funneled into that algorithm and you just have so little choice. It's the browsing thing. I always say to people when they come in, look, we're anti-algorithm. We're anti-algorithm. You can go from Doll Graveyard that Charlie Band put out on Blu-ray for the first time last week, and go from Doll Graveyard to Visconti's The Leopard within three shelves. And that's what life is about. It's
Yeah,
not
man.
about being saying, well, you like Barbie, so maybe try something similar. You don't. We're not factored. We're not made that way as humans. You don't you don't eat potatoes for your evening meal, and for your dessert, you don't think, well, I'd like something potato based because I've just had something potato based, so I'd like something potato based in the dessert as well. You don't work that way. We all like something different. Variety is the spice of life, and I don't think it's healthy to be kind of funneled into a very specific way of viewing. We need to sample films from different eras, from different countries, see different cultures. I mean, we're becoming, I don't want to get into politics, but we're becoming, somewhat xenophobic nations, both the UK and the US. And, it's all about sampling different cultures and sampling different ways of doing things from around the world. It's brilliant to do that. It's eye-opening. And to not have that, to not have access to those kind of films, it is really sad. But anyway, soapbox, let's get
Yeah, no, before we step down, but yeah, I agree with you on everything you're saying. And it does come back to film culture in general and how it builds on itself, as you were talking about, like 40s directors influencing 70s, 90s on up. We cut ourselves off at the knees if we don't allow our young generation of filmmakers to have this access, or allow them to only have access to what the algorithms will allow. Um,
them.
that's making it, that's hurting the present cinema, like it doesn't allow that cinema to be as expansive or as interesting as it could be. Anyway,
Mhm.
I totally
Yeah,
agree. And I,
just very quickly, Brian, just before we move on,
yeah,
that's a really, really interesting point, to be honest, because you do think to yourself, a young up and coming filmmaker in the year 2034, say in 10 years' time, what will their influences be? If they want to make an action film, if they want to make a cool action film into 2034, will they have access to Polizio Tesci films from the 70s? Will they have access to cool film noir films from the 40s? And you kind of wonder if you limit the access, as you just said, what the end result will be. Will they be making more conservative, rather less influential films just because of the narrowing of their influences? I don't know. Really interesting.
Well, it's funny. I've never heard an analogy like you just gave for algorithms, which is the potatoes thing, which is totally what they are, and it's fascinating because when you put it like that, I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense to not do that, to not want
Mm,
to not want to have it dictated that way. Anyway, I like
yeah.
anybody that's watching this channel is probably already on board with all that we're saying, but I do like the idea of you having younger people coming into the store. And I'm hearing about that from some other video stores around LA.
Mm,
They're seeing younger people
wow.
come in, and that's really exciting to me that younger people have decided, for whatever reason, kitsch, whatever it might be. Um,
Mm,
even my daughter, who if I'm honest, she would, mostly streams movies. Like it's just easier for her. But she has asked me more than a couple times, "Can I have that DVD?" And I'm like, "You don't even have a player in your room." She's like, "I know, but I just want." And then so there's beginning to be some maybe slight fetishization of older media by younger people because
mm,
she's
mm.
only 15.
Right.
But it's exciting, and I hope that continues. That we see sort of
Yeah.
the way that vinyl has really blossomed over the last decade,
Mm, mm.
that we see maybe VHS and DVD and Blu-rays, despite the fact that they're getting pulled out of Walmarts and Best Buys and things like that, um, that maybe that people still gravitate towards those things and the idea of ownership and not having to stream, just getting stream fatigue. Maybe that's what's happening, and
Yeah.
I'm all for it. For young people.
Mm, mm.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
anyway, I should
Oh,
talk
sorry,
about.
Dave. Yeah,
Go ahead.
go on. No, I was just going to say about the increase in prices. It has to hit a limit sooner or later. We're all
Oh,
being paying an extra pound. We're getting adverts now and stuff like that. The experience has gone of it being a precious, new thing, advert free and stuff like that, unless we pay a premium. So I think there will be a ceiling at some point, and it seems to be hitting right now, but I don't know. Whereby people will just simply say, "Well, hang on." And I'm terrible on my social media, on my work, Facebook work, Instagram, but constantly bashing people over the head with every Netflix scandal of price increases and things like that, because people don't realize, and if people have an alternative, people may stop for a second and say, well, hang on, there's an alternative to this. Let's give it a go.
yeah, and as much as physical media in some ways is also hitting kind of a ceiling, if I've seen some videos about this online recently. There's a lot of very expensive special editions out there, and granted, they are putting the work in and they're making. I don't want to call anybody out in particular, but I'm sure you can think of a few off the top of your head
Mhm.
where you're like $60. That's a lot of money
Yeah.
for one set, even if it's three or four or five discs. But that said, physical media in general, VHS tapes, DVDs, older Blu-rays, that stuff is still, especially in the used market, relatively inexpensive. And so you can really
Yeah.
build an interesting collection without
Mhm.
having to go nuts and spend $60 on, one disc. So I'm hoping
Mhm.
that that will be an influence on the younger folks and that they will stop by. You still see them in some used shops, but online, I guess, is still going to be where they shop, but that you can get a lot of
Mhm.
stuff relatively cheaply that way. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that'll happen, and continue to.
Yeah. Without doubt, without doubt. We don't. It's very nice to have a lovely UHD Blu-ray of the Third Man that plays the Third Man theme when we open the case. But we don't necessarily all need that. A DVD that could be used for a couple of dollars, a couple of pounds is adequate enough if you're building that collection.
Absolutely. Well, I should say now, one thing folks may or may not be aware of is just how much in the physical media space you've done in terms of commentaries. I think you mentioned to me you were nearly at 30 commentary tracks or just passing that.
We're recording 28 and 29 next week, and then we have 30, which is a really special film. That's coming up in about 2 months' time. Yeah.
Very nice. So
So
when did you start doing commentaries, and do you have any particular favorites if that's something you can do, or if you don't want to do that, I understand.
we got to know. I went out on a night out. This doesn't seem like it's going the way you think. I went out on a night out for many, many beers with 88 Films
Mm.
about 10 years ago. We had some mutual friends. So we went out to Liverpool, had some beers, and they made us a lot of promises that they can keep. And we held them to those promises. And we started writing booklets for them. Booklets eventually turned into, why don't you guys graduate to a commentary, see what you can do? We did Terror Train with Jamie Lee Curtis. It was good fun. And yeah, then about 3 years later, we got an email out of the blue from Arrow, and they said, we read your website, and you seem like the ideal people to spend 90 minutes talking about Children of the Corn 3. You know, what an accolade. And so then the work is steadily coming in. Yeah, we're not academic commentators, myself and my partner, Matty Budrevich. We're not academic commentators. We don't talk in highfalutin terms about the overall meaning of the film. We are very much a meat and potatoes pair of audio commentators. But then again, when you're doing the commentary for Species for The Awakening, there's not much in academia that we can integrate into that. So we do tend to be very plain speaking. Of late, a couple of good ones have come out. Obviously, the best thing that we have ever done and will ever do is the Arrow Video Enter the Video Store set, which has got
Amazing set.
three of our commentaries, perfect for any cure to insomnia. And it was great fun to do. We kind of helped produce that, and it was absolutely fantastic. We're starting work on Enter the Video Store Volume 2 very soon,
Oh, wow.
and
Fantastic.
exclusive. And then Crawl Space has just come out. Crawl Space, a Klaus Kinski film, has just come out. The David Schmuller film from 88 Films. We did a really cool commentary on that, where we
Oh, nice.
criticized Klaus Kinski plentiful amount and then praised him in equal measure. And then just before that, we did the Jeff Burr film, Pumpkinhead 2, which is a really cool sequel. So yeah, there are our last couple, and they're good fun. But yeah, we've got a couple of Charlie Band films coming up in the next couple of weeks, which are always good fun and seems to be our field of expertise. Or the fact that we're the only people that can talk for 90 minutes about a Charlie Band film.
Well,
One or the other.
that's still impressive nonetheless, because I couldn't talk for 90 minutes about most movies that I actually like. I'm much more now of a bite-sized hook you and get out kind of thing as we do on our podcast. But the I have great respect for those that do the commentaries because I know that the amount of work that goes into them can't possibly be compensated for in terms of money. And that's obviously not why you do
No,
it. It's not why you do it.
exactly. I mean, I'm going home now to watch Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. No money can compensate for that. No figure on earth can compensate for that. No, but it's good fun. But people have different styles. Tim Lucas will script every word of his commentary and spend days doing that. We tend to be more ad-libbed with surrounded by pages of notes, and we'll dip in and out and have a general conversation for 90 minutes. And it tends to be a bit more relaxed. But, you know, if whatever movie it fits to. I mean, Tim's movies that they're quite detailed and quite iconic. The movies that we look at, maybe not so iconic.
Well, that's exciting, and folks should definitely keep an eye out for the ones that you've done in the past and the stuff you've got coming up. I should probably let you go, but um, what can I leave the viewers with in terms of like I'll leave a link to the YouTube channel and to your socials. You're most active on Twitter and Instagram, it feels like.
Yeah, the Instagram is the work page, which is Snips Movies, but Twitter tends to be the place where I tend to speak to the never-ending void more frequently. But yeah, I mean, we all try and pull back from socials, don't we? It's never that much fun, especially the way a few of them are going. But yeah, that tends to be the best place to find me. And yeah, the YouTube show drops pretty much every Friday at 5 p.m. GMT, which is around about 9 a.m. PST.
Perfect. Yeah, it's perfect for me. Yeah, I'll like I said, I'll leave a link to the YouTube channel and definitely folks keep an eye on every Friday for Dave's show because it's always entertaining to see you go through the new releases every week and then you vary it up with all kinds of different segments that you've chosen to do for the show and it's a lot of fun and it's just neat to see inside your place. It's a cavernous, fascinating, small little space that I adore just getting a look at. Oh, and I should say you've gotten some nice press recently. You've gotten in the papers a little bit. We should talk about that right before you go.
It's been crazy. Yeah, I don't hunt any of these people out. I don't sit outside the offices of newspaper editors and campaign. I don't stalk them on social media. Not yet, anyway. But no, we had two really good articles this week. This year, sorry. Two national newspapers. The Guardian covered us at the start of the year, April, and then just now we've had one of the tabloids cover it. That could have gone any other way. One of the tabloids covered us called the Mirror, which is the second biggest newspaper in Britain. We had a great feature, double page spread on Saturday. So hopefully that should see a bit of a difference. I'm already starting to see people come in who have read the article that weren't aware of us, because of course what we have is a situation whereby nobody looks for a video store in 2024. If you're to open the Yellow Pages or what the American variant, or Google and look for a video store, you would have to be certifiable, because everyone presumes there is none left. But there's two. And thankfully, with a bit of press every now and then, it just keeps the momentum going, and it just enables people to discover us and hopefully give them an alternative to streaming where they can come in and discover a load of really cool and exciting films that maybe they didn't know existed before.
Yeah, and with a knowledgeable guy like yourself there to
Oh, I
be
don't
the human recommending algorithm, it can't be anything but fantastic. I just love what you're doing, Dave. And I was saying to you before we started, we've been communicating, I think since you said about 2016, when we started
Yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah.
some lists for my blog, my now sort of defunct blog, but it's been great communicating with you over the years and reading your writing and getting film recommendations. And I just love that the store is getting some attention this year. And I don't know what my viewership is in the UK, but if there's any UK viewers out there that aren't aware of Snips Movies, I gotta say, from what I've seen, you really got to get yourself down there and give it a look. So, if for whatever it's worth, hopefully this can help draw one or two more folks maybe your way. That'd be my
Thank
ideal
you, Brian.
ultimately. It's a pleasure.
I
It's a
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Appreciate
Great pleasure to talk to you, sir. And like I said, folks, definitely check out Inside the Video Store every week. It is a wonderful look for me, even at some stuff that I don't. Dave's picking up stuff that I'm not aware of sometimes. So, like, as much as I like to be on the cutting edge, the cusp, if you will, of what's coming out, Dave's even closer to it. So, anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll talk to you very soon. Okay, bye bye.